This is Motivation. I'm Lori Joy Kingwell.
And I'm Chrissy Van. We're two dreamers on two wheels inspired by our community.
And celebrating the voices we're just lucky enough to discover along the ride. So if not already, like, subscribe, follow along, do what you gotta do to not miss an episode.
So I'm so excited because today we're talking about destination addiction. And of course, we don't mean constantly packing your bags for the next vacation, however lovely that would be. We're talking about becoming ingrained with the belief that success, your personal success, is a destination. And as a result, the dangerous belief starts that happiness and success is always somewhere else, somewhere in the future.
So in this episode, we are going to dive deeper into that destination addiction, and we're going to help ourselves recognize it in ourselves. So get ready for the motivation. All right, we're talking about what is destination addiction. Chrissy, let's get it started.
There is a reason why I'm so pumped about this, and it is because no matter how much self-work I've inflicted, I have always brought upon destination addiction in some form back to my life. Now, some of it has been career-oriented. Other times it's been about having the next thing and getting stuck in this consumerism mindset where all of a sudden you're filling a void. So before we dive in too deep, I want to talk a little bit about the term itself, because it was actually created by a British psychologist who coined it in 2011. His name's Robert Holden. And I'm going to share a quote from his 2011 book, which could perhaps resonate with many of you. Beware of destination addiction. The idea that happiness is in the next place, next job, or even the next partner. Until you give up the idea that happiness is somewhere else, it will never be where you are. Now, that's basically a permanent state of not living in the now. And that can be an extremely dangerous recipe if you don't recognize those signs in your own life that you're finding that. So for me, Lori, honestly, I got into a really competitive job field. And I know a lot of people can relate to that. Mine in particular being broadcasting and on air. At any given time, I could open up job boards Canada-wide, and there might be one position at a time that fits the job description that I could apply for. But that was the goal from when I was a little kid. And initially, when I started down the path to try and integrate the types of roles that may help me achieve that, every single leg of the journey that I would reach, when I would have that moment going, holy shit, I got the thing that I was striving toward, I would let that dissipate and get away from me so instantly, where all of a sudden I was like, but what's next? But what's next? And now you're missing the point. And for so long, I would say a massive chunk of my 20s, I completely missed the point. I wasn't reveling in those building blocks of what I was seeing as success. In this instance, being work success, but it could be in so many other facets of your life where all of a sudden it's this runaway train where quite literally you're seeing life pass you by and not reveling in the present moment.
Yeah, Chrissy, when you said you get to that moment and it's like, oh, it's this moment. I've got this goal that I've achieved. And then it was like blink and you were on to the next, right? And that's really that's where we kind of miss all the steps in between, like you brought up, because we're so focused that this moment's going to bring this grandioso validation. Really? Like, because that's kind of what we're told is like, you set your goals and you have your aspirations and you have this idea of what that feeling of success will bring you, because there's so much attachment. There's so much attachment to like your worth. Like, yes. I'm somebody. If I get this goal, if I achieve this, I'm somebody, I'm something. I didn't disappoint. And not that goals aren't incredible. I'm a big goal person. I love having big dreams. I love having big goals. But it's all the noticing of all these little moments and these little accomplishments, or just even the noticing the experience along the way, that when you can take those in, it's like a muscle. Like when you're practicing taking that in, when you're practicing giving yourself validation because you sat at the damn desk for 10 minutes, but like that's a success in itself, right? And when you're practicing that muscle of like celebrating the little milestones in a day, And that's just like the professional side of successes, or those big goals in that context I'm speaking to right now. When you get to those moments, and really that's how you like, you really move towards it, doing the little things to get to the grandiose goal. But you're able to take that moment in its full capacity because you've been really exercising that muscle of the noticing and being present in where you're at, what you're doing, feeling the happiness in the small moments in your day. And yeah, it's still gonna, you're gonna be on to the next after that anyways. You're gonna have a bigger goal after that goal. That's the point of life. But you're gonna feel that in a much different, connected way when you get to those successes or when you get to those moments. But you also got to reap the reward of all the little beautiful moments and experiences along the way. Now that I'm talking mainly in regards to like professional successes, because my God, dude, did I miss the whole point of that most of my life up until I'd say this year. It's exactly what you're talking about.
Better late than never.
Better goddamn late than never.
No, I think that I love that you mentioned goals and the importance of those, because that's exactly it. I don't want to discourage anyone from having goals. And same thing, I was an extremely and still continue to be a very goal-oriented individual. But you hit the nail on the head. It really is about losing track of those little moments. I use this podcast even as a tremendous example. When we set out to create this and really generate a platform that inspires us with the hope that it inspires other people, we made a promise because of those learnings, being like, you know what, it's going to be about the passion of the creation. And if it turns out to be something great, but at the end of the day, it's about the passion of the process. And I think that destination addiction, in no matter what form of your life, whether, could you imagine having a relationship and actually, I can imagine, because I know people have done it, that have been so focused on, let's say, the wedding day, that they forget the building blocks of the foundation of a relationship in the middle.
Such a great example.
Right?
And then the wedding's done and they slip into this like slight depression because it's like, well, what now? And you're like, what do you mean, what now? You've got a partnership that you hear. What do you mean, what? The focus has been on something that you've kind of missed the point. And not saying they don't still love the person or that they're not still looking forward to the life, but what was the day really about? What was that moment really about? Because when we're not being present in the why, and you're not being present on a day-to-day basis of like connecting to what it is you're doing. And here's the thing, in my personal life, I was always really good at this, of like having, I shouldn't say good at it. I was really conscious of the fact of like having a goal, but then not being so blinded and focused on that goal that you miss all the good stuff in between because you just want to be there already. I don't want to be here. I want to be there because that's a lot better than where I am here. Right. So here's an example of like, I knew we wanted to move to the Caribbean. I was eye of the tiger. And I say we, me and my husband. And we were living in Edmonton, Alberta. It was like winter time. And we knew we were getting close to this coming to, actualization. And I remember being like, I just want to be there. I don't want to be in this minus whatever weather. Done. I'm just done. And I was so focused on it, which again, amazing to have goals, manifest, put your energy into that. But all of a sudden I had that reminder of like, here's the thing, right now you're in Edmonton, Alberta, and there's a lot of really cool and beautiful things about this city and a lot of amazing people. And you're going to live here right now, regardless. So be open to that experience. You'll get to the Cayman Islands or the Caribbean. You'll get there, which we did. But right now, this is where you're here. And so I solely just then stepped in, took the blinders off and opened up to what was happening around me. I ended up being in a random band, like those random things happen. Yeah. Yeah. Like played at pubs and like, sang in front of, did a cabaret in our hometown that sold out with 400 people. And like, no one even in my hometown knew I sang or wrote music. And it was just this incredible experience, one that actually led to me feeling more comfortable talking publicly, which worked towards a goal, which I now, here we are right even now. And so it's these little things where like, but I didn't realize, truthfully, I not only didn't realize or didn't do it, but I didn't even realize that I was supposed to take that same perspective and plug it into my professional life. Now, my professional life, on the other hand, all those goals, if I wasn't there already, I was disappointed in myself, or I wasn't, worthy
Yes.
enough. I wasn't good enough. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have, I looked at everything that I didn't have or everywhere that I wasn't yet versus the experience to cultivate those skills or learn it or do it or just fail forward with that shit. I did it all the time in my personal life. Professionally, this is all pretty new to me, actually. But the great thing is, because I've practiced that so much in my other, part of myself, it's a cheat sheet. It's a hack. You get to kind of go, okay, remember that, like, the real juice, the good stuff is
I love that good stuff.
I always say, you'll hear me say juice a lot because I it was like the real juice of it.
No, it nails it so well, though. I love the juice. But one thing that you did say really resonated with me because I was in the same situation where my 20s, I have journal entries where it hits home because I literally would write to myself in my own journal, I'm just searching for my sense of good enough. During a time that I reflect where I was doing an aspect of my career that probably 2 years prior to writing that, I would have given anything to have been in the spot that I was, but it was never enough. And I think that we all of a sudden can apply that accidentally and bleed that into many other areas of our lives. That same thing happened. My husband and I, we bought a home when I was quite young. And it was always, so we got trapped in that whole consumerism. Like now I just shake my head over it, but it literally was like, what knobs are we going to buy for the cupboards? And like, let's change out. And every time I'd like, I'll be happy when I have the new countertops installed. I'll be happy when I have this. I'll be happy when I upgrade the car. Consumerism really is a complementary aspect to destination addiction because it really exists to fill that void that you are not finding in your everyday, which you're generally not finding because you're so distracted by the peak experiences that you're trying to fulfill versus trying to invite everyday experiences into your life that give you that jolt and that zest. And I'm sure if you pick apart your day, you'll find them, but it's a distraction that all of a sudden makes us feel I'm not enough. I don't have enough. And telling yourself, like looking back and having that inner narrative over yourself at any time, that's not okay. We should be our biggest cheerleaders. I mean, more than likely, you're a pretty rad human, right? We all are. And it's like, if you start telling yourself that on the regular, you start to believe it, and then it's cyclical. And now all of a sudden, I'll be happy when I have this. I'll be happy when I have this. I know the pandemic's something that I brought up in many of our episodes, but that was the jolt almost that a lot of people needed to think, oh my goodness, time's passing by and I'm not happy. Why is that? And taking this re-examination. And again, I think it is because so many of us looked at happiness, which I think is so difficult to define, but it's because we were looking at it as a destination versus something that's really does come from within. I don't care how corny that sounds, but it does come from within. That's your state of well-being.
Oh yeah. Even to the extent with COVID, you hear, I'll be happy when this is over. I'll be happy. Were you happy before it started?
Yes.
Like how happy? Like really, how happy? And yeah, I just think,
oh, that's so good because I'm sorry, but I've heard that so much. I'll be happy when this is all done, when we can do this again, instead of trying to find the juice of the moment.
Juice of the moment, man. And you're right. You can be happy when this is all done, but there's some happy things happening now. There's some super fucking sad shit and there's super traumatic shit, but there's also some really beautiful things in it too, right? And, we're taught this from a young age. Like I said, that's what I do for a living is I study human behavior and especially within children and early development. And we were, even what did you say when you were a little kid? You believe that, oh, I can't wait to be a big kid. I can't wait to go to school. Yep. I can't wait to go, like I remember my brother, we would go to Dairy Queen and he would order and this is where I'm going down the road of comparisons. What do they have? Keeping up with the Joneses bullshit. my brother we'd go to Dairy Queen and he would get, I think he got like peanut butter parfait and I got like a sundae, and I looked at his, I was like, his is bigger. It's got more fudge. Like that's better. And then we went next time to Dairy Queen and I got the peanut butter parfait. He got a Blizzard, and then his Blizzard looked so much better than and I spent so much of my time focusing on his damn Blizzard that I wasn't having. I forgot to enjoy my peanut butter. Do you know how good a peanut butter parfait is? It is so good. It is so good. And it was
Lori,
those little things.
So perfect.
And I really, it's a thing that I see, that rather than it being of like focusing on what you have and how rad it is, whatever it is that you have, how simple it is that you have, and not even necessarily going, well, people have less, so I should appreciate this, or, I wish I had that, but I like what you have is something. It's not nothing, and that's something, and that's where you build from. And if you want something more or different, then you look at it as, again, that kind of like goal, but you still appreciate what is. Again, yes, have that next thing, have that next step. Don't be mad at yourself or disgusted with yourself of not of worth because you're not there. That's not the point. That's not what dreams are there for, is to be like blink. What's the little like witch where she twinks her nose? You're not supposed to like ting, ting, ting. And then I'm exactly what I imagined for myself. Like that's not, but that's shown to us. And I guess that perfectly leads us into that next part of what are the repercussions like of this mentality, the destination addiction?
Well, I think the biggest one, and I mean, you and I, Lori, both ride motorcycles. And I think the best example that I can get
it,
the
motivation.
Motivations, recurring theme. But I could not imagine hopping on my bike and let's say we're all going on a trip up to Whistler, British Columbia on the beautiful sea to sky and hating the entire ride. I only want to get to Whistler and hating everything about it. That's not the point. So I think the repercussion is having something that magnificent completely pass you by. And the biggest thing is we don't always have the promise of tomorrow. So why can't today be a great day? Why can't we find some substance in our day to add value to our life? The other big detriment that I can see from having this behavior and from my own personal experience is exactly what I was saying before, being in a position. And again, it's a professional example, but it could be a life example as well, because I know a lot of people, now I'm in my mid 30s and I love that my friendships are a mosaic of people in every different stage of their life. Some are married, some have kids, some are single, some are intrepid travelers. And I think that's incredible, but not everyone celebrates where they are, because exactly what you touched on before is they're looking over here and thinking, well, I should have that. Well, I should have the 2.5 kids and the 3-story home. And it robs them of the joy of their life. It really is a robbing of joy. And that's not a way to live. It's not a way to live. We're all in our own journeys and we need to enjoy our own journeys. And just like on a motorcycle as well, we need to stay in our lane. It's always highly recommended, and focus on our own lane and our own journey and our own ride. And there may be bumps along the way and there's going to be cool new stops that you didn't expect, but it's about soaking in that entire experience. And I just really now try and reflect even from a granular daily level to find that juice even on a per day basis, because that is life.
If you have those blinders on with it, you also miss what life has to offer you. And also this like intuition that knows better than even you do.
Love this.
And so when you get hyper focused on what all that means and you're not paying attention to honoring where you're at in that moment, you miss out, yes, the juice, but you miss out on like people that are going to come into your life that you should have stopped and listened to, whether that's like a stranger on the street. And this is the thing, I do this and have done this for so much of my life, being just like, well, I'm headed somewhere and yeah, that's where I'm going, but there's a whole adventure in the middle. And that's usually the good part and the good stuff. And the end is like the cherry on top. What's the repercussions of the destination addiction, wow, you miss a lot of really good shit. You miss meeting a lot of really cool random people. Like that's one of the other things, the amount of incredible folks that I have met, whether it's even like a 2-minute meeting or whether like we still have contact information. Oh my gosh, and some that have changed my life quite literally.
The talking about missing people, I have such a good story about this, which luckily the universe did a little like hello again. But when I had moved to Vancouver, I became very invested in trying to build my life here because I had basically displaced my husband and I and felt a little bit of that in charge of making sure everything went well because we had a good life before and I caused this little upset for the sake of my career once again. And when I hit the ground, I was like, okay, I'm a very social person. I want to have friends. So quite literally, I was like, well, I work from home. I'm going to have to put myself out there. Signed up for about every networking event I possibly could, desperate to really find that social connection that I was so craving. And I did put myself out of my comfort zone consistently, but I was so focused on that. Like, I'm going to be happy when I have my little group and I'm enjoying myself on the patio once again. Meanwhile, the very first building that I lived in, I had a neighbor that I met on several occasions who rides. I did not ride yet. But this neighbor literally lived 2 doors down with me, and my husband had befriended her and her boyfriend. And I had gone out with them one time, and then he had gone out with them many times. And I declined the invitation a lot of the times because I was so focused on my work stuff and, oh, I have this networking event and that networking event. Well, this friend is actually part of our Lita's ride group. So
No way.
fast forward now, I guess this would have been 4 years later. And I show up at my very first Moto Social event and I sit down and I turn my head and I get a Chrissy and I'm like, Haley. And now my very first neighbor 4 years later is an extremely close friend of mine. But the wild part, and I've said this to her on many occasions, is why didn't I just make myself more open in that moment? We could have had years of friendship. And I'm so happy that the universe has brought us together
Like
once again. Haley was
like
my first neighbor.
Oh, that's wild.
But I was so focused on the destination, so to speak, and that I wasn't paying attention to what was right in front of me. And as a result, I had this lack of fulfillment inside. And that's where I say the robbing yourself of the zest, the joy, the fulfillment, that really is what destination addiction is when you're not living present enough to fulfill yourself in that present moment. So that's such a fine example in my life of what you could miss if you are always looking to the next. But thank goodness the universe was like, hold up, and then invited that person back in my life again. But it blew my mind sitting at that table.
That's a perfect example of, yes, you want to say, yeah, I want to meet people. I want to step out of my comfort zone. I want all these different things, but then you have to incorporate that with where you are now and the noticing. Yes, still sign yourself up there. Yes, still go, yes, still take those leaps of faith. Absolutely. They're crucial. You have to. That's part of it. But you also have to be where you are. And notice where, I wanted to be in the Cayman Islands, but I was still in Edmonton and that had something to offer. You wanted to be, get out there and build your social network and all those different things. But Haley was right there as well. Like, and that had so much
knocking on my door.
Quite literally.
On my door.
But, you really have to quiet the noise. Noise of the outside world telling, happiness is in this pill. Happiness is in this job. Happiness is in this big house or this big vehicle, this beautiful vehicle or this. Holy man, it's probably the most difficult thing that I find constantly, taking hooks essentially out of your skin, proverbial skin, because it's like, hooks pulling here, and you have to just remove it. And sometimes it's awkward and painful. Like social media, I've taken a huge step back from. I need it for work, but I only check it aside from Marketplace because I'm looking for a bicycle. But like checking it, for as socially wise, I was finding myself getting angry, comparing myself, feeling the obsession need to, every time I sat to have a pee on the toilet, my butt got sore because I sat there too long because I was scrolling. I just got lost down that river.
Yeah, I'm sure you're not the only one floating down that river, so do not worry. But I think all of what you say there really brings us to the most exciting part of our podcast, I
Oh my
feel.
God, get excited.
Motivation maintenance.
Wham,
Yeah.
wham, wham.
Choo, choo, choo. But in all seriousness, what is the point about talking about all these things that we have? I mean, we obviously covered destination addiction in a broad brush, and I'm sure that there are many points that resonate with all of you because it's something that bleeds in and out of our life depending on how much focus and self-care we're giving ourselves. So how do we provide this motivation maintenance? What do we practice in our life to help combat ourselves always thinking that happiness is somewhere other than where we are? What is wrong with the white right now? So, for motivation maintenance, Lori, what are your best recommendations for those that are dealing with destination addiction?
Okay, two things that are working for me. One that's worked for a long time. One is my new thing. So one is for the professional. This is new. So I champion my smallest of successes. Like I said, if I sit down at my desk and I manage to pump out concentrated work for even 15 minutes to 20 minutes, that I'm like, yeah. Like that's something because if I'm not going to champion my small successes, they have to be consistent, but champion that, then I'm not going to be able to really stand behind my big ones. I'm not going to be able to really feel them. And sometimes the smallest ones are actually harder than the big ones because when you're getting to the big ones, it's because you're so practiced up that you've earned it. That's your almost like reward. And so the small things are the most challenging. And so those are the things that I focus on really championing. And then I feel good about and I feel happy about, and I feel like a success because I am a success in that moment. So yes, I have my big goals, but I champion these smallest steps towards that goal on a daily basis. And I even write them down when I remember to, sort of thing. The other component for personal, this is like practice that muscle of not having the blinders on and necessarily the path that's going to get you there. So things like errands that you have to run anyways, like the grocery store, or if you got your usual walk or anything like that, challenge yourself to just take a different way. So don't go the same roads, don't go the same direction, go to a different grocery store, go to a different park, go to a different something. But along the way, practice that muscle of noticing who's walking. If you see a stranger, maybe say hi. If that stranger looks like they want to actually have a conversation, have a conversation. Absolutely soak in that experience along the way to get to that destination. And that destination, suddenly that whole experience, even just growing to the grocery store, can feel like you just had this like really unique, just simple experience. And you're practicing that muscle. So you're going to notice it when you go to, say, a foreign country and all you want to do is sit on a beach and eat the same food and not leave the little safe area. You'll feel more compelled to like go be part of the culture. Go be part of something else, if that's even like a goal, or if it's something just on a personal level that you might start to notice. I put more value in stuff than I do people. And you'll start to notice that you feel a lot more involved and feel better when you just go out and do something that participates in the human world versus being a consumer and participating and standing in a line to buy the pants that you think is going to make yourself feel of worth, where you just get at home and you put in the closet and you realize, well, that didn't last long. But I tell you, that conversation with the stranger that made you laugh or smile or learn something new, I'll tell you that last because I can remember most had. So that's my thing, is like the noticing and championing your small successes. Those are my
I love that.
maintenance.
Lori, I love that. I think one of the best nuggets stemming from exactly that, because really what your call to action for us is to practice mindfulness and finding the joy and simplicity. So maybe what that looks like for you is something as simple like, I just want people to be able to focus on that little jolt in their day, that jolt of joy, because that is another thing that I think people need to celebrate. So maybe for you, that's at the end of the day when you start to cry at your mind. And I know that's normally the time of day where our brain starts to go, I didn't do this. I got to do this tomorrow, and like goes crazy and you can't sleep. Well, instead, I want you to at least set aside even just a minute, set a timer, and find that nugget of your day that brought you a zest of joy. It could be the way the sunset looked. I know on the date of recording for us, for me, it was realizing that because of daylight savings, it was no longer dark at 7:00. And to me, that's a huge joy because I love long sunny days. But taking that moment to have that essence of mindfulness around the little things that brought you joy, that brought you life. And when you start to unfold that in your mind, you're going to more and more be noticing the daily happiness that's available to us if we just take that moment to pause and look around.
Hallelujah. I agree.
I tried to harmonize, but I wasn't in a band, so
no, I can't actually
probably
harmonize.
learned the reason why.
Nope, I can't either. So I didn't say I was I didn't say I was good. I was good in the band. I just said I was in one.
There you go.
Yeah.
I once played the tambourine in an Irish bar. That is about it. Anyways, we don't want to just leave you with your motivation maintenance. We like to leave you with our quotes that inspire us, also known as the fuel stop. So Lori, what's your quote for today?
Okay. Mine is from Walt Whitman. Happiness, not in another place, but this place, and not for another hour, but this hour.
Mm-hmm. My fuel stop for you is happiness is not out there. It's in you. And yes, I know it sounds really corny, but it's fucking true. That last bit I added myself.
It's fucking true. You've just listened to the Motivation Podcast with your host, Chrissy Van, and me, Lori Joy Kingwell.
Thanks for joining us along the ride. We've got new episodes dropping every Monday, and we're all about community. So follow us on Instagram at Motivation Podcast and visit our website at themotivation.com.
And in the meantime, tanks full and full throttle.